pursuing issues outside the mandate of price stability and full employment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Cortez Masto from Nevada is recognized.
Thank you. Let me ask right off the bat, thank you, first of all three of you, for the opportunity to meet with you and have a conversation with you. But let me ask you this. The board that you are looking to be nominated to, there's 7 members. Can any single one member weaponize the mission of the board? Yes or no? I'll start with Ms. Raskin.
No.
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 Thank you. That makes me feel much better. Dr. Cook, you have held many high-profile leadership posts. Let me ask you about your previous leadership positions with other regional Federal Reserve banks. I know you serve on the Advisory Council for the Opportunity and Inclusive Growth Institute, led by the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, and you also are a board member for the Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis. How have these positions prepared you to serve on the Federal Reserve Bank?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I have come to know the needs and opportunities associated with rural communities through my service through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis. Certainly, community banks are struggling. There's been a secular decline in them over the last 30 years, but they provide absolutely critical capital to small communities and places where capital doesn't show up. My membership on the board of directors of CDFI, same thing. CDFIs provide capital. They're pillars of their communities where capital doesn't typically flow. And what we know about the United States is that entrepreneurship is a tried and true path to the middle class. And both those institutions, whether through affordable housing, through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis, or through supporting entrepreneurs, would help to support this American dream of entrepreneurship. So I've been grateful for those opportunities, and they would inform, if confirmed, my deliberations on the Federal Reserve.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also really appreciate the opportunity that I see before me. I think the diversity is important for this particular board because it is important that the members really mirror and represent the rest of the country. How are we going to understand the needs of so many individuals across the country if we don't have that representation at all levels? So I appreciate all of you appearing before me today. Let me ask you, Ms. Raskin, we worked so hard during this last pandemic to appropriate the CARES bill, the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and they provided important relief to families while also looking to do long-term investments in health and housing and infrastructure. I also know, coming from Nevada, that the last financial crisis, it took us 7 years to come out of that financial crisis. So my question for you is, what were the lessons that we learned from that last financial crisis, and how did they help us as we looked to this financial crisis to avoid that extensive economic pain for Americans during this pandemic? If you would reflect on that.
Yes, thank you for that really interesting question, Senator. And I think the lessons are still to be learned because we're not, we haven't completely emerged certainly from the effects of the pandemic. But I think you're right to point to differences in approaches that certainly both from the perspective of monetary policy and fiscal policy that were taken, and the extent to which those, that different mix of policies had an effect. I mean, in one dimension, I think what we saw was that the financial sector actually did quite fine, seems to have done quite fine during what was a massive blow that came from the pandemic. That was good to see, and suggests certainly something about the resilience that the financial sector had going in and the mix of policies that were available to respond. So I think this is an evolving question, but it's one we should always, as policymakers, and if I were confirmed, I would urge us to always be trying to think back. I mean, it's pretty amazing that for many of us now there have been 2 crises in our lifetimes. I mean, so there are things to learn, and I think that trying to understand those learnings will certainly help as we continue to build economic resiliency going forward.
Thank you. I know I've gone over my time. Dr. Jefferson, thank you again for meeting with me. I will submit the remainder of my questions for the record. Congratulations to all 3 of you.
Thank you. Senator Lummis of Wyoming is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome nominees. My questions